There are already hundreds of videos online about SpaceX's IPO. Most of them will tell you about the rocket launches, the Mars plans, the Elon Musk headlines. We are going to skip almost all of that. Instead, we're going to look at 5 things that are getting much less attention, but that actually affects our portfolio, even if you and I never bought a SpaceX share and never planned to. So here's something unusual. Two major index providers had to decide how to handle the largest IPO in history, and they made completely different decisions. NASDAQ changed its rules. Under the old system, a newly listed company had to wait about 3 months before it could be added to the NASDAQ 100. Under the new fast entry rule, effective May 2026, a company can be added after just 15 trading days if it ranks in the top 40 by market cap. The minimum float requirement was also removed. S&P, on the other hand, looked at the same situation and did the opposite. S&P confirmed it is not changing its rules for the S&P 500. Their existing requirements, including a profitability test, stays in place. That means SpaceX is expected to be excluded from the S&P 500 for at least a year, possibly longer. So, same company, same IPO, same week. One index opened the door early, the other left it closed. That's the kind of structural detail that almost never makes headlines, but it directly determines which funds become SpaceX shareholders and when. While NASDAQ was rewriting its rulebook, SpaceX was making an unusual decision of its own. In a typical IP, retail investors, regular people like you and me, not institutions, get access to somewhere between 5 and 10% of the shares being offered. The rest goes to pension funds, mutual funds, and large institutional buyers. SpaceX initially signaled it wanted to reserve up to 30% of its shares for retail investors. That's 3 to 6 times the normal amount. In the days leading up to the IPO, that number was trimmed back, reportedly because institutional demand turned out to be even stronger than expected. But even at that reduced level, it's still roughly double or triple what most IPOs offer individual investors. Here's the question worth sitting with, without answering it for you. Why would a company go out of its way to put more shares directly into the hands of everyday retail investors like you and me? What does it need to do? One read: this is about access. A deliberate choice to let ordinary people participate in something historically reserved for institutions. Another point of view: retail investors as a group tend to be less price sensitive and more loyal during volatility than institutions, which can provide a kind of stability for the stock in its early days. Both of those things can be true about the same allocation at the same time. The exchange's job is to give you the number. What it means is the part you get to decide. Is SpaceX actually profit making? This is where it gets layered, because SpaceX isn't really one business, it's three. The first is Starlink, the satellite internet service. In 2025, Starlink brought in roughly $11.4 billion in revenue, about 61% of SpaceX's total, and it was profitable, with about $4.4 billion in operating income. The second is the rocket and launch business: Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, Starship. This is the part most people associate with SpaceX. It is made up of roughly 22% of revenue. The third is the newest. In February 2026, SpaceX acquired xAI, Elon Musk's AI company, which also includes the X platform, in an all-stock deal. In 2025, that segment generated about $3.2 billion in revenue, but posted an operating loss of roughly $6.35 billion. Add it all up, SpaceX total 2025 revenue was around $18.7 billion, but the company posted a net loss of roughly $4.9 billion for the year, and another $4.3 billion loss in the first quarter of 2026 alone. So the picture is, one segment, Starlink, is genuinely profitable and growing fast. The other two are currently not. Starlink's profit are in effect funding the other two. What it means for Canadians. Here's where this connects back to you and I, even if SpaceX never crosses our mind again after today. If SpaceX gets added to the NASDAQ 100, which under the new fast entry rule could happen within the next 2 weeks, Every Canadian fund that tracks the NASDAQ 100 will be required to hold SpaceX shares, not as a choice, as a mechanical requirement of tracking the index. In Canada, that includes ZQQ, QQC, and HXQ. TSX listed ETFs, which are held by millions of Canadian investors inside TFSAs, RRSPs, and regular accounts. If you hold any of these and SpaceX joins the index, a portion of your money will automatically be used to buy SpaceX shares. You wouldn't need to do anything. You wouldn't even need to know it happened. And there's a flip side. Because index funds are required to stay roughly proportional, adding a new large holding means trimming existing ones. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia all get reduced slightly, but to make some room. Valuation context. One number deserves its own moment. $1.75 trillion. At that valuation, SpaceX immediately ranked alongside the largest companies on earth. In the same conversation as Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon. Every one of those companies took decades to get there. Microsoft and Apple were founded in the mid 1970s, Nvidia in 1993, Amazon in 1994, Alphabet in 1998. SpaceX was founded in 2002 and reached that valuation post its IPO on day one of trading. But valuation is only one side of the comparison. Amazon does roughly 650 billion in annual revenue. Apple around 400 billion. Even Nvidia, the world's most valuable company, generates around 165 billion. SpaceX's 2025 revenue was 18.7 billion only. SpaceX enters the list of the world's most valuable companies at a valuation comparable to businesses that are in terms of actual revenue 10 to 30 times larger. This gap is not a verdict. Market prices companies on what they expect to happen in the future, not just what has already happened. But it is factually the size of the gap, and it's worth knowing it exists. None of this required you to research SpaceX, form an opinion about it, or decide whether you believe in its mission. If you already own a NASDAQ 100 ETF, the decision may already be made for you. Not by you, but for you. It's just what happens when you own a piece of an index, and the index changes its rules. As always, thanks a lot for watching the video. This channel is not an investment channel, an investment advice channel. This is just for education purposes for us, Canadian retail traders and investors.